Hey everyone, and welcome to Brawlhalla Weekly, episode 15. My name is Partofthecreed, your host.
I'm DesignatedAsian, one of your co-hosts.
I'm Sparky878, your other co-host.
And this week we have no special guests, so we'll mostly be covering news and spending time on the meta discussion section of the podcast, which there's like a lot to talk about because we missed last week. So we're just going to hop right into it. On the dev stream, so on the Tuesday dev stream, they showed off a pretty good number of things. They showed off some skins, which, I mean, they usually do. Came with a new chest. That's all very exciting. It was like Japanese themed, like they had Hattori, Koji, and Core. So that was neat. They talked about some new test features, which we're going to go into test and live, and we'll go more in depth about that later in the balance. But they also showed off Grumpy Temple, or Small Grumpy Temple, which is finally a much welcome change. You, Duke and Sparky, have been sort of... I mean, you guys were the first ones to really do 2v2 like a year ago. And since then, there have been constant complaints about Grumpy Temple, right?
It's been back and forth. Like, there's periods of time where, like, a bunch of people get upset, and then suddenly, like, everyone's like, all right, we can accept that Grumpy Temple kind of makes sense in the grand scheme of things, or at least it doesn't quite not make as much sense as some of the other maps. And then people get upset again, and it's just back and forth. But overall, the general theme is that people don't like it.
They were actually thinking about changing it before BCS started. Like once it was decided that there was going to be some 2v2 element to BCS, they were going to change Grumpy Temple. And I'm not going to say that I designed Small Grumpy Temple because I didn't, but there is a very crudely drawn paint picture out there that I sent to Foda with literally that exact design, where you take away the platforms, you make the small top soft platform a little bit shorter, like not as long. I think I took away the wedge. Like I said, push the wedge into the background because the wedge is stupid, and then move those platforms closer together. And that I'm not saying I made Small Grumpy Temple, but you know, it's out there somewhere in the airwaves of the internet.
And to clarify, sort of going off of what Sparky was saying about what Small Grumpy Temple actually does look like, right, so they moved the two platforms, or they moved the two main platforms together. They took away the two small soft platforms, took the large soft platform and moved it down. They kept the triangle, although I think they made it smaller. And they also, like, shaved off the corners on the end sides of the two platforms, a lot like small King's Pass. So, I mean, it was basically a full rework of Grumpy Temple, where they did keep the triangle, because that's sort of like the identity of Grumpy Temple, but it's also not as bad as, like, it was before, because now, like, to hit that triangle, you need to double jump. Like, you can't, if you jump from one platform to the other, you will never touch that triangle. And, like, they made a point of showing that off and saying, like, hey, the triangle is not going to get too much in the way. Obviously, I'm sure there will be times where someone will bounce off that triangle and not die, and people are like, Grumpy Temple, why? But I think it's a much welcome change. Like, the old Grumpy Temple was just big. It was by far the biggest map on the 2v2 pool, and it just made it so hard to go and chase your opponents, especially if they didn't want to fight you. And no one wants to play a fighting game to not fight someone.
I think a lot of people in ranked would very much beg to differ on that one.
No, you don't understand. Those people, they run away because they feel they have to. Doesn't mean they like it. I don't think they like it.
The only thing I think Small Grumpy Temple is missing is, like, it feels empty on, like, outside the body of, it's an owl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, whatever that bird is, it feels empty. And on my original proposed theory of Small Grumpy Temple, I had wings coming up, because that kind of filled that void where there was just kind of nothing, where those soft platforms were on the right and left. But obviously that's not an actual functional thing. That's just a picture in the background.
All right. Well, you know, hire Sparky, BMG. He'll design all your maps for you.
My drawing was really good.
Sure it was. Moving on the Thursday stream, Raiden and Dolce didn't do much. They were just
So business as usual.
Raiden and Dolce. I mean, Dolce drank some coffee and Raylan facepalmed and said that the community needs to stop whining. Hey, all right. On the Friday stream, there was some standard Friday stream stuff. Berthan and Defensive lost their Bombskaball BC Extras match. Like, Berthan and Defensive. But Foda mentioned, I think, that the prize pool for BC Extras has come up to like $950. So, you know, it's pretty substantial. It's not 50,000 like the main tournaments are, but I mean, if you want to practice up some Bombsketballs or beach brawl, yeah, BC Extras, win some money. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Whoever wins that, you're welcome, because I won one of those BC Extras. I can't.
I won one of them too.
I know it was
Duke. Where are you?
3v3.
I don't get nominated, and I wouldn't do it if I was nominated.
Sad life. All right.
I'm not a big fan of those custom game modes.
Do it anyway. Anyway, Raiden showed up on the Friday stream, and basically told everyone to go register for BCX. Because if you don't register, we put in like the bottom pool, like the death pool, where you could lose to someone better than you before you even have a chance to get to the bracket. Because everyone who doesn't register will just end up in that pool. So like, don't take that chance and register now. If you have your ticket, just go register, because all you need is your ticket number and your seed, and then like it'll just go from there. If you're still trying to figure things out, you should do it soon, because there's only less than a month until BCX. So go figure out your plans, get your BCX tickets, register for the tournament, so you know you end up in an adequate pool. Cool. And finally, they talked about a new sponsorship, and for that, I'm gonna hand it off to Sparky.
It's community news. This week, was it this? It was last week, right? During the week that we skipped.
No, it was this.
No, it was during this. It was this most recent week.
Oh, it was this most recent week. All right. Well, Absolute GG ended up picking up Jellyfish and Arkosh, formerly, I guess, still somewhat known as the Lads. And it's important to note that Absolute isn't tier 1, and it's one of the reasons there was a big campaign a few weeks back to raise money to fly Jelly and Arkosh to BCX.
I mean, basically, don't think that they like raised all this money and then immediately got a sponsor and like, we're keeping all your money. They did need to raise that money, and they're still, of course, super grateful to the community for doing that.
Yeah, good on everybody that helped out with that.
Wasn't it like Absolute who made the Reddit post and said exactly why they were making it? It was like,
I think it was Techie who made the Reddit post, but Absolute was definitely like, you should help us.
Absolute was behind the crowdfunding campaign. They were the ones that actually did that. Techie might have been the one who made. Techie was the one who made the Reddit post talking about the crowdfunding campaign that was started by Castore, I think was his name.
I know
that's his name on Reddit.
Yeah, on Reddit it's like Castore or something like that, who generally posts regarding Absolute things. Anyways, speaking of competitiveness things, tournament news, yay! BCS
nice
just
segue.
happened. Yeah, is smooth. BCS just happened just the other day, and it was the EU 1v1. The winner of it was none other than Enix Daiku, showing off that Ragnar. I think he's only had it for like 2 weeks or something like that. He's just kind of just been working on that.
I mean, it didn't come out it's like the newest character, so there wasn't all that much time to develop it anyway, and he basically hopped on that and went, guitars, axe, OP, I'll do it.
Well, it was like it came out before the 2v2, but he was like, I want to play Jala for the 2v2 with Dobrein, and then I'll switch to Ragnar after the 2v2. So whatever that timeline is. But yeah, he didn't have a lot of time to work with Ragnar, but he still ended up pulling it out over second place Maltimum. Maltimum, the winner of the EU regional, still had a really strong showing. He was the one who went through all of upper bracket without really going down, so good on him. And then third place was Frostcake, the person who knocked Daiku into the lower bracket. Frostcake, I think a lot of people didn't really expect him to make it this far. Like, a lot of people kind of were johnsing for him, saying like, oh, he beat Daiku in the 2v2. It was Sidero with the Gauntlet Gims and whatnot. But Cake showed that he could hold his own, and he got third place, which was awesome. Also, shouts out to shout outs, whatever. Fourth place, Stimpy, who took out some solid notable players. Aram, Memoria, and Lands. Stimpy, I know Sparky was saying he didn't really expect a lot from Stimpy, but homie showed up to play and did amazing, so good for him. And then Dobrein, who took 7th place, apparently just was Johnsing as well, because he was sick. And
hey, look, I just want to say Egg super sick, and he got first. So where are you at, Dobrein?
Yep. These are some of those across the pond Russian Johns coming out here.
Apparently,
he's just a drama queen. We all know
that. But also we want to give a huge shout out to Dobrein, because he made, if anyone who watched it or is going to watch it, he made those graphics. He made that new fancy replay graphic, the bracket graphic, the new like lower third with the score. All that stuff was designed by Dobrein, so huge shout out to him, because it looks awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people got super excited about the new bracket layout, which, I mean, when I saw that, I was like, this is going to be sweet. And then I realized I had to, like, put in all the names and all the little scores in every single text box. And I was like, this is going to be a pain, but it was totally worth it because it just looks so awesome.
Yep,
sure.
I was there during the time when you and Dobrein were just in Discord, and you were typing everything in, and then he looked at it, and then he went through and was like, all right, move it up 3 pixels. Move it to the right 1 pixel. All right, on to the next one. Move this one to the right 3 pixels. Move it down 2 pixels.
Yeah, it's like, you want to get those really perfect. You know, Brain spends a lot of time, like, making sure everything looks nice, everything looks good and professional, and it totally comes out really well in the end. So, shout out to him. All right, I mean, that was kind of short, because there wasn't a ton of news, but there is a lot of balance and meta stuff to go over. You know, so much to discuss. We're going to start with the throw changes from 2 weeks ago, because that was sort of like a big deal when it came out, and we didn't have a podcast to really talk about it. I mean, first things first is they threw out these throw changes, and the biggest thing was that throw had the 10 frame startup, and then, like, that day, Ika came out with a 90 damage shoe combo, and then I looked at that and extended it to 120 damage, and obviously it was never the dev's intention to throw out a nerf to throws, only to have it turn around and come out with a 120 damage shoe combo, which is fun while it lasted, because I just liked trying to make that go as long as possible, but they toned it down, and basically, now, along with the recovery time increasing on all throws, and then stun time getting decreased depending on whether or not your opponent's already stunned, they also toned down the hitboxes. They changed the startup to 2 frames horizontally and 4 frames vertically, and if you weren't hit during the frames, but the item is still on top of you, then it still has immunity, and it changes it so that the throw startup doesn't apply if your target is already stunned. So, what do you guys think?
I love it. I absolutely 100% agree with this. I said throws were an issue a long time ago. Back before the Meet the BCS crew video a very long time ago. And I 100% love this. It just completely takes that stack throws out of the equation. It takes, like, Lance just throwing up and then initiating, Lance throwing down and then initiating. Same thing with Spear. Same thing with Hammer.
Those aren't gone.
But if you do it, like, right up close, they are gone.
Okay.
Because
but they're not
stacked.
They still
exist. It's not as much of a defensive option anymore.
Right.
It's not just, oh, they're coming, where it's just like a last minute panic just to get that off. You actually have to use your brain now.
I agree. It's nice. Throws definitely feel better. But I still get frustrated when somebody insists on, playing Nash and just trying to put this umbrella of throw hitboxes above them. Because it still is, it's frustrating to approach aerially. And then, I mean, that's like 80% of my approaches. If I try to approach grounded, then I get, neutralized to the face or whatever. But it definitely feels better now. I know a lot of people really didn't like the stacked throws. So, it's good. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's definitely better.
I mean, you talked about the whole, throwing your lance up as a zoning option, and they seem quite aware of it because of the fact that they had it where it's 2 frames normally, but if it is a vertical throw, then instead it's 4 frames, which is pretty notable. I honestly would have liked to see that number like a little higher because the vertical throws were never the issue when it came to like the 120 damage combos. But I understand that the entire intention behind the original 10 frame startup was to get rid of stack throws, and that's sort of what they were throwing out there was, hey, stack throws is what we want to nerf. Stack throws never should have been in the game. It's kind of weird that, you know, you point blank range and you throw your weapon out there and suddenly like they get stunned, and especially like on Lance, which has a giant hitbox, people will throw the weapon forward and someone behind them will get hit, and that's just dumb. And so like, I mean, part of that is addressed here, even if it's past 2 frames. If you're both stacked on the hitbox, then like you'll still get immunity. So I think it's great that they made this change, but I do want to make a note that that doesn't mean throws are like fixed, because the zoning option is still awful and it's still a thing that exists in the game. Maybe it's a little bit harder now because of the recovery time and the stun time. I actually want to delve a little bit deeper into that, because I think that sort of went over everyone's head because like the 10 frame startup felt the most drastic. But like when I hopped into my first rank game when this change went up, I was like, wow, I'm finding it really hard to clear the board because I keep trying to throw my weapon, but I don't have it yet because of the recovery times. So recovery time on throwing a weapon or gadget went from 14 frames to 18 frames, and the stun time of weapon throws went from 17 to 21, but if it hit a target that is not already stunned, it decreased it from the 21 to 16. So basically, it was an attempt to make it so that the weapon throws were a little bit nerfed if you tried to use them for zoning, but it was better for like the true combos that I think most people appreciated about weapon throws, because that's one of the things I was like, that's just really cool, watching people create these combos, use weapon throws into like unarmed downlights and then pick up the weapon and do some things. And like, to be clear, it's not necessarily that the stun time was a direct upgrade, because it's also affected by the recovery time, right? If you have more recovery time, then you keep stun time the same, then you lose advantage frames. If you keep your recovery time the same, but you decrease stun time, then your advantage still goes down. So they basically increased both of those so that the weapon throws that happened with stun for true combos was about the same, and then when you throw a weapon in an attempt to zone, then your advantage goes way down. So, I mean, I don't know how much you guys have really felt this. You guys don't really like zone with weapons, but like, I know, Duke, you were saying it's still frustrating to play against.
Yeah, it can be, because there was like that the day or two after the throw changes hit, there was a lot of people who were still shell shocked and like refused to throw, and that was the best time of my life. And now that like it's kind of settled, there's still people who like kind of take advantage of the fact that, you know, they play like a higher move speed character than me. They'll run around the map, just constantly try to pelt me with whatever weapon they have. Or they'll be like, you know, like I was saying, Nash or Scarlet or Orion, and they'll just put like an umbrella over them. And I have to find kind of like the right timing to get inside of that umbrella before they just go back to throwing more things in the air. So it can be frustrating at times.
I would still agree that that's annoying. Is when there's a hammer spawn, when a Nash specifically Nash has a hammer. I've seen it more with Nash players. I don't know if it's just a cultural thing that everybody who plays Nash is scum of the earth, but
I've seen it with Orion. I don't know what this Nash is.
The most with Nash, where they're throwing the hammer, and then when the hammer comes down, they throw the spear, and then they throw the hammer, and then they throw the spear, and they're like, "Ha ha! Come get me, bud!" And there's not a lot you can do. I mean, you still do have the chase dodge in option where you approach from the ground. dodge in and queue up an attack to then cancel the dodge in. And of course, you can throw your own weapon. Just because throws were nerfed and I don't like throws doesn't mean you should never throw, never, ever, ever. Just don't be a jerk about it. But mostly in my ranked games, I maybe the strict numbers of the nerf aren't enough to eliminate the issue, but culturally, people are just throwing less in my ranked games. It's not completely gone. It's not completely not frustrating anymore, but there is a significant decrease of throws. Whether that's due to the numbers or due to people just realizing, all right, maybe I shouldn't throw anymore.
Right. Which, I mean, I think what they've done now is great, and it will persist until basically the players who really like to just constantly throw figure out the timing or whatever they need to do. The meta evolves a little until they're like, oh, I just do it like this, and I have no problem, and I can zone out my opponent, and at that point, things will need to be tweaked a little bit more. But I mean, with BCX 5 weeks away, I think they have time to figure that out after BCX. So that's the throw changes. Pretty cool.
The throw combo with Hammer was hilarious, though. That was absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad somebody found that out. I almost wish that they weren't able to take it out before the tournament
just to see how many people could pull it off. It's not 100% trivial because you do need to do it like pretty frame perfect. Like as soon as you get past the first stomp into throw, and then on top of that to boost it up from 90 damage to 120 damage, you need to do like diagonally downward chase dodges, along with weapon throws that cancel from the chase dodge, or stomps that cancel the chase dodges, followed by weapon throws that are delayed by 1 or 2 frames. Like there's a whole nuance to it. It's not super crazy. But it would have been fun to try to see who could pull that off. So those are throw changes. Next up is the patch that happened 2 weeks ago. We didn't get to talk about that, and really the most notable thing was like a pretty decent number of sword nerfs. I heard Twilight crying in the distance because Twilight's seen sword nerf after sword nerf. I remember, I want to say it was in May, he was like, the sword has been nerfed every patch for the past, like, 10 patches. I mean, there wasn't any sword nerfs in the last 3 months, so that's pretty good. But basically, let's run over these and figure out how fair they really were. Firstly is recovery nerfs. Increased startup from 6 to 9, decreased damage from 24 to 20. Sparky, I know you've talked about recovery.
Dude, sword recovery is so good. Like, it's so good. Back occasionally when I would, like, not play Vrax, if I was, like, doing customs with Duke or anything like that, I would always throw out 2 recoveries in the air. And I always said, nobody expects the second recovery. But sword recovery is so good. The hitbox is great. It's a good move to just recover back to the stage. Like, in terms of how quickly it comes out, how much it actually moves you back to the stage. Just from a pure recovery standpoint. But the hitbox is great. The damage was absolutely ridiculous to the point that, I mean, you just always throw it out. It is incredibly safe. It would destroy floaty, and it was, oh man, everything about sword recovery is so good.
Do you want to say something, Duke?
No, I agree. Sword recovery was really strong. I don't know if you're gonna go over the rest of it, but I think it's weird that they're still aggressively nerfing sword because I didn't think that many people were still complaining about sword.
So on the subreddit there is the pinned thread about balance, and you know, I believe it was Physic who made that a while back. He sort of forgot about it. He brought it back, and the day, as soon as he brought it back and said, "Hey guys, here's where you can talk about balance," I went and looked at that thread. Almost every single comment was about sword. I was blown away too, because I didn't think in tournament settings or like hearing some of the competitive players talk about it that sword was that big of a deal. But apparently, like, the majority section of the population believe that sword really needed some nerf. So I think that's mostly where that came from.
It's just sword has always been a sword issue with me. It's just it has so many damage options. Downlight Sayer, even after they nerfed it, I've said it before, you could have it do 3 damage. That move is that combo is still insanely good. It's so reliable. I mean, it's not the most dangerous thing in the world. It's not the safest, but it's not the most dangerous thing in the world. Based on, like, you see people, that's bread and butter sword right there, and people are able to do that at all stages of health, at all times. It's a damage combo, it's a kill combo. Sword kills with Sayer, sword kills with Dare, sword kills with Nair, sword kills sometimes with recovery. You hit a downlight, that's into a kill option. You hit a neutral light, that's a great it's a great panic, I'm scared option. They're aggressing onto me to halt that. Every move that sword has is incredible.
I think Sword is pretty good. I don't know about every move being incredible, but it is nice to see recovery get the tone down. I mean, you look at this, 6 frame startup was what it had before. That's a neutral light. That's almost as much as like all the Qatar ground moves. That is an insanely low number. 6 frames of startup. And on top of that, it doing 24 damage. I mean, I'm going to draw back to the Qatar comparison. Like, those moves do 5 startup, but for the most part, they're a lot less damage. You need to like use a bunch of 5 frame startup moves to build up damage. A sword recovery that has low startup and does 24 damage, you just keep using that over and over again, and you'll build up damage so quickly. So it is nice to see that those 2 things, startup going up to 9 and damage going back down to 20, really puts recovery at a more reasonable position. Moving on to some of the other moves on Sword. Nair decreased stun time from 20 to 18. I think this was mostly to address the 0 to death combo that people were afraid of.
No one ever hit it.
Twilight hit it, not in a tournament though.
No one, like,
that's about the only time I ever saw it.
That's what I kind of wish people weren't so like afraid of, like in the same way that throw combo, right? Like everyone's like, oh my god, that's ridiculous. I want to, if someone actually hit it, then I'd give more poops about it. Like that's one thing that I appreciate about TWK is because TWK, he'll like, you show him a combo and he'll look at it and he'll be like, all right, well, here's why, like, it isn't actually achievable. Sure, in theory it like works and it could be very fundamentally interesting, but like in actual gameplay and experience, odds are this is never going to happen. And that's why I kind of don't
even
care
if
that.
someone did hit it, like, the point is that it's stupidly hard. They should kind of be rewarded for managing to pull that off. I would be blown away if someone had gotten the 120 damage hammer throw combo. It's still amazing that Twilight got those downlight, gravity cancel downlight, Nair recovery, like on people in ranked. Like that's a really impressive feat. And so, you can argue about, instead of, killing, you just do a bunch of damage. That's more fair. And I sort of understand that, but on the same vein that Duke is talking about, it's like, there's some pretty noteworthy combos in Brawlhalla that do a lot, but you have to ask the question of, I mean, how much of a concern is this really? Because when you have 1 frame, 2 frame gaps, when you have to do things frame perfect, like, that's really hard. So, Nair stun 20 to 18 basically made it so that on that combo, after you did the last downlight and then the Nair, you couldn't end up hitting the recovery. And I mean, already recovery increased its startup from 6 to 9. So that combo is sort of dead now because of the startup increase and the Nair stun time. So rest in peace. I'm glad Twilight got it. Dare variable recovery on miss from 21 to 24. Do you guys have any thoughts about this? I never felt like Dare was a huge issue, but at the same time, I sort of understand the frustration when someone is gimping you with a sword and they hit Dare into Dare into Dare into Dare.
Somewhat now, I don't think the Dare gimps are that much of an issue. Like I'll still jump into them because I'm dumb and I get into that panic mode. But the more that people are learning how to recover, I specifically mentioned this I think it was yesterday, that the more people are actually learning how to recover back on the stage more than just, oh, I have a jump, press, jump, I have a jump, press, jump, I have a jump, press, jump to get back to the stage, then those sword gimps, they don't happen very much anymore. You don't see the yellow, orange, triple dare gimps. You see people getting killed very much in the red when they should have already been dead anyway from a dare. So, I mean, I'm always down to nerf sword. I'm still one of those people. I'm always down to nerf sword. Everything's so great about sword. I'm always down to nerf it. This maybe wasn't necessary, but I'm always down to nerf sword.
I'm of the opinion that I think gimps are interesting. Sword gimps were always like one of those things that I was very excited to see, like way back to like closed beta. You know, it is exciting to see somebody die way before anyone would expect them to die. That being said, I don't understand why you think sword dare gimps are a big issue when like LDZ's getting Sair kills for days with bow, or like
he does think bow's an issue. Don't make him start up on bow.
Here's what I'm not saying LDZ. I'm saying why is BMG nerfing sword dare, but they don't care about sword Sair. They don't care about the gauntlet ground pound at the bottom of the map that chased Daiku for days yesterday, right? Like things like that make almost less sense to me than sword dare gimps, which you have to hit dare ground pound, and you have to hope that they panic jump.
I will not argue that gauntlet ground pound has its issues, but I mean, some of those was Daiku literally just like moving to the right and not dodging up, or like not changing direct. Like you can't sit there and expect your opponent to not like.
I'm not saying that Daiku like played that perfectly, and gauntlets are like this magic instant kill weapon, but I'm just saying like it arguably takes less effort to hold a ground pound than it does to do like 4 dares and ground pounds and expect the dodges. Like Daiku getting gimps with Jala was interesting because he would wait out the opponent's, you know, recovery options and then go back into the gimp. Whereas like the ground pound gimp, it's exciting because it's like, holy crap, he's holding the ground pound gimp, but at the same time
he's holding the button.
You know,
yeah.
So that
I mean, like you said, BMG does listen to community feedback, and I think that's part of it, is that community feedback was like, sword is crazy. And so that's part of it, but, you know, you're right, there are other weapons that could use some toning down. There is a balance patch next week, the last balance patch before BCX, apparently, and I think that's gonna be it. That's gonna be the time for them to do all these things, or forever hold your peace, Duke has no faith.
It's not that I don't have faith, it's that all of the things that everyone wants, I'm not even going to just like be selfish and say just me. All of the things that everybody wants, there's no way that they can feasibly get all of those things and not shell shock a reasonably large number of people.
I wouldn't be surprised if the next patch was a slightly more aggressive patch than we're used to. I mean, this one was a little bit aggressive with something like chain dodges. I'm like, if jump dodges go in next week, or sorry, not jump dodges, jump changes go in next week, that's going to be a reasonably aggressive change. But beyond that, I think it's either going to be not a lot or it's going to be a ridiculous amount. And like there is time to adapt to that patch before BCX happens, but you still have other tournaments. You still have the BCS tournaments that are still $1,000 prize pools that people are going to have a handful of days to learn how to play. And if you're too aggressive, that's going to be off-putting to a lot of people, but I don't see it being that way except for the jump changes.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Although I wouldn't mind if they just released Brawlhalla X. All the damage is turned down, and you have tons of stun time, and 0 to death combos for days. But they're probably not going to do that. It's certainly going to be interesting. The final note on Sword is that they did increase the stun time on Neutralite from 18 to 20, so there was a buff. I think that's basically just Neutralite follow-ups are pretty hard to come by. I mean, you'll see some people doing Neutralite, Chase Dodge, Downlight, but that's just, it's not viable, and people will always be able to jump or dodge out of it. So, increase some stun time, get some more advantage frames, do some more things. So that's cool, and that's Sword. Moving on, we're gonna talk about these jump changes. You've heard so much about, and basically jump changes. They're pretty simple. You get now 2 frames of startup, 5 frames of recovery when you hit the ground, and air jump now matches height of ground jump. The last one's not super big, but the other 2 are like huge. And so I remember when it came out, a lot of the things that some people were saying was, BMG, you covered the floor with honey. And it was a little bit awkward. So real quick, what were your like first impressions of this?
I haven't played it, but I like the idea of it because I think jumps are too strong right now. I haven't played it. I've had people, converse about it and say like, oh, I don't like that you still have to deal with the 5 recovery frames even if you hit an attack. So like if you get like a falling Sair, you're suddenly stuck in recovery and you can't like follow up off the Sair. And I can understand that argument. I think overall I like that they are addressing jump, because right now I think jump is just so good of a defensive option that like a lot of people panic jump because it's so safe, and then bunny hopping is a part of that. It's just you get an ejection seat.
I love this. I love everything about this. It's different. It's definitely different. It's not going to feel 100% natural in your hands immediately the second you put your hands on that controller or your keyboard. I think it's something that you can get used to. I think it's one of those things that that can definitely be seen as a necessary evil right now. It does feel a bit wonky. It definitely does. I think I'll agree with a lot of other people that the recovery frames on it are the bigger problem in terms of not feeling good than the startup frames.
Yeah, and so I mean, there is that issue that it's sticky and it feels weird and is not how you're used to, and it's not smooth. But the inherent problem with jumping, and we've talked about this on the podcast. I think we spent one episode a while back where I just hammered on floaty play and why jump needs some changes. And it's this idea that it's a number of things. First of all, it's the fact that dodge has a 2-frame startup, which is reasonable, but jump has no startup. And so the answer to getting out of combos is now jump, not dodge. If it's a true combo, and there are true combos that and like the definition of true combo is that you can't dodge out of it, but there's some true combos that you can just jump out of because they have 2-frame gaps that are compensated by the 2-frame dodge startup, but jump has no compensation. And so you just see people jumping all the time. Oh, you get hit by an attack, you just jump. Jump is always the right answer. And it's a little ridiculous, right? You get into these games where, one of the players will do nothing but jump throughout the game because it's got the high impulse, meaning that when you hit that jump button, you're immediately sent with a lot of speed upward, and that speed is only curbed down by the time you get to the top of your jump. The bottom of the jump, you're just still you're really fast. And so it's hard. That makes it just hard to react to. And you just have so much vertical and horizontal movement. Like regular horizontal movement on a jump allows you to change direction really quickly. And there was a comment that Raven made once that was like, this is how, if you just describe jump as a mechanic, it sounds ridiculous. It has, in a current state, it has 0 startup and 0 recovery. It allows you to change your direction change your moving direction at the push of a button, and it happens immediately. Like it's crazy. And so this jump nerf is maybe not the change that people necessarily want from a perspective of how it feels. It does feel weird. It felt weird to me. Some people are saying they adapted to it in 3 hours. And that's great, but I think for a lot of people, it'll take a while to get used to. And I understand that. But even if this isn't the change you necessarily want, I think this is a change that the community kind of needs, because it's one of the more inherent problems in Brawlhalla as a spectator sport. What were you saying?
I said it's Batman.
It's the Batman of changes. not the same thing.
Anything that discourages floaty play, I am down for it. Floaty play is not fun to play against. It's not fun to do. It's not fun to watch. Nobody, if you enjoy doing anything floaty, never talk to me again, because you're not a cool person. And the fact that it's already discouraged floaty play in the EU meta, I am so happy with that.
I mean, I if you've been watching, there's a game playing down below. That's Daiku versus Memoria. And I noticed this when the game was being streamed. I sat there and I watched Memoria and said, let's see if I can count how much Memoria stays on the ground for any given time. It was basically no more than a second at any point throughout the match. He'd go down on the ground as soon as he hit the ground. Maybe he'd do like one attack and then immediately jump back up.
And that attack was mostly a sidelight.
And that attack was mostly a sidelight. I mean, this was basically, I don't want to say Memoria was making the game more boring. He was doing what he needed to do to win. And that's using a really crazy mechanic, which is jumping. And so, Daiku chased after him, and that was great. But there's a recognition there, like, plenty of people watching that went, this is really boring. Like, this is not fun to watch. And so, jumping, it needs this change. Duke, you have anything to say?
No, yeah, I agree. I think the jump changes are good. My only other concern would be what are going to be, the fallouts of it, right? So suddenly a jump has 2-frame startups, just like dodge. Suddenly there's like 18 more true combos in the game, and now, Katars are more broken because you can't jump out of the down light string, or suddenly you can't jump out of Axe sidelight into Sair. There's going to be things that are going to suddenly crop up as broken, and this is going back to kind of my point about how this next patch is the last patch before BCX. Throwing in aggressive things like this, as much as I want jump changes, as much as I don't want to see floaty play, there's going to be some thing that you're going to find afterwards that you're going to be like, well, crap. Was not expecting this. Was not expecting Lance to suddenly have an 80 damage true combo because you can't jump out of it. That's all I'm saying is hopefully there are enough people testing it out right now to find out what things are gonna break in time.
I mean, with the whole, it's the last patch. It's the last scheduled patch that will have any balance changes and impacts with them. If somebody finds something, like if somebody finds the hammer throw combo of the jump changes, then at that point, I'm sure they'll hotfix it, because that's hotfixing one thing that is completely broken and breaks the entire game. That wouldn't be a huge patch. If they didn't fix that, I would be surprised. But it's not like they're gonna look at something and be like, okay, it's broken. Well, we already said it was last patch. There's nothing we can do. Sorry. BCX is going to be a bunch of hammer throw combos the entire time.
I mean,
I wouldn't argue.
Here's the thing. In other fighting games, I know some people aren't a fan of, the other fighting games comparison.
This is Brawlhalla. It's different. We have to be different.
Yeah, that. There in other fighting games, you will get situations where a game will be released. Most fighting games don't have as active developers as Brawlhalla does, that just like throw out balance patches every 2 weeks. They'll just release the game, and then the community will be like, all right, we're making this, a competitive game. We're gonna have tournaments, things like that. There have been fighting games where someone has found like a ridiculous true combo, and everyone in the game will hop on the ridiculous true combo, and they'll be like, well, this game is just broken. And then like a few months later, someone will be like, this is how you counter the combo. Like, this isn't as broken as everyone thinks. And that takes months. Like, it's worth noting that just because you see like a combo or something like that doesn't mean the game's over. That's it. They broke the game. You can't do anything about it. We already figured out the meta. It's been 2 weeks. The meta is figured out. Like, there's so much development that goes into these games. Frame data takes time to truly absorb. Combos are found constantly, and you can't just expect that, Dobrein found the Russian mafia. Now every single stomp is going to turn into the Russian mafia, and Hammer can now kill at 150 damage. Like, Hammer is the most OP. No, it's not.
120.
What?
It's 120. It starts at 120, roughly.
Yeah, roughly.
That's early, if you think about it. That's pretty early.
It's early. But, like, my point is that these things aren't as black and white as people try to make them out to be. There's a lot of stuff that can go on. There's a lot of nuance. And I think even if someone finds a crazy 80 damage Lance combo between now and VCX, it won't be the end of the world. Like, it really won't. People, as soon as people start fishing for the Lance combo, they'll find ways around it. Like, fishing for anything is never gonna work because that's all you expect. You're raising your eyebrows. Like, when someone fishes for something, you figure out how to counter it.
Works.
You figure out how to counter it. That's why you can't spam in Diamond, because people just adapt. Spam is a common problem in the lower ranks in Gold and Silver, and people were like, man, everyone in this game is spamming. How do you counter it? You learn the hit. You learn the hitboxes. You learn the recovery and active frames. Maybe not like studying the recovery and active frames, but over time, once you see the move used over and over again, you go, oh, if I see the animation, if I see Hattori like moving her arms downward, I know that the downlights or the down sig's about to come out, and I need to jump up and go behind. Like, you learn that over time. The more experienced players, Dobrein, Daikyu, LDZ, etc., they do that actively. They will see moves and be like, I can instantly see where the hitboxes are going, where the active and recovery frames are, and this is how you counter it, and they'll adapt immediately. If someone starts trying to fish for anything, it instantly becomes a problem for that person, because you get good players who will be able to get around it. So, I think if someone finds like a really crazy combo, 150 damage, 0 to death, all you have to do is hit one move 5 times or whatever. Sure, maybe they'll do a hot patch, but I don't think we need to worry too much about that. That's my spiel. There's nothing. Yeah.
I don't know. If you want to continue on in that vein of thought, I hope you understand that meta shifting happens over prolonged periods of time, and that we are theoretically condensing that into a period of about 4 weeks, given that the patch is going to hit this Wednesday, and then, it's yes and no. I understand your argument that even a 100 damage combo on any weapon, there's going to be people who figure out ways around it, but at the same time they have maybe not even half, they have like a tenth of the time that they normally would in like something like, say, Street Fighter or whatever, Marvel.
It's not like they halt tournaments in Street Fighter because something comes out. The tournaments, the events, they'll all keep going. It's a matter of adaptation. And if someone finds a crazy combo in Street Fighter the day before a big tournament, like, people just gotta suck it up and deal with it, right? Like, it's congratulations to the guy who found that. That's just my thoughts on it. But speaking of competitive play, let's talk a little bit about gadgets. I feel like the gadgets discussion has come up very vaguely a good bit over, the lifespan of competitive Brawlhalla, which is a good year and a half. People have always said, gadgets, those are kind of weird. Smash doesn't use them. We don't need to use them. Things like that. But they've been holding solid for a long while. And I was sort of surprised to see people suddenly go, we don't want them. They're done. Take them out. BCX is in a month. We need to take out all the gadgets. Personally, I'd like to see the gadgets stay, but that's more of a thing about, like, because I sort of like seeing it. Like, I like seeing gadgets pop up and suddenly explosion and death, and it's hype. So, what thoughts do you guys have on this?
The more and more I see gadgets, the more I see them as just a negative experience for everyone in general. Getting a gadget over a weapon, not enthused on it. And when my opponent has one, I mean, Duke said this in his Reddit post about how it slows down the
Reddit
game.
post. Can you believe it?
I did.
It's rare.
I almost said that I read Effie's one just to trigger Duke a little bit. It came right
Which one
after
is his
Duke.
first one or his second one?
I didn't even know there was a second one. But it's just, I don't see gadgets adding that much to the game other than a little bit of identity to separate it from Smash. Should we take out gadgets because Smash doesn't use gadgets? No, not just for that reason. Should we take out gadgets because top players don't like them? Not necessarily just for that reason. Should we take out gadgets because they halt play? Maybe not just for that reason, but when you consider all of these things, I think gadgets are rough. Casting top level games, when a gadget comes out and somebody runs into their own mine, there is no way to cast around that. That makes the very top player who ran into a mine look very stupid. And if I try to cast around that, that makes me look stupid. And I do not like that. That makes the player who has put hours and hours and hours into this game look like nothing.
He ran into the mine. He must suck. I saw that come up a few times, and I was like, you guys don't understand how, like, have you never been hit by your own mine? Like, those things happen, and I think that's pretty notable. Another thing that I saw Twilight talk about a little bit in Duke's post was, Duke mentioned, like, sometimes gadgets can be pretty hype. And then Twilight's response was, is it hype to watch someone throw a mine on the center of the field and both players, like, stand on opposite sides of the mine because they don't want to go anywhere near it? Right, that's not exciting. Mines represent a danger. You put down the mine and suddenly you create a bubble and no one wants to go near that bubble. Like, it's just too easy to accidentally end up getting knocked into that mine, and so it just slows down play. And there are a few tournaments that have happened this past week. They're happening for us that are removing gadgets, and I'm curious to see how that sort of goes with the people playing them. Friday Night Brawl and Monday Night Brawl, along with the Ren 1v1 tournament, which happened on Sunday. Those are all tournaments that are removing gadgets. And if it goes well, I think there's a possibility that gadgets are removed at BCX. But I think it'll be drastic.
No one's gonna notice. Literally, no one who's playing in any of these tournaments is going to be sitting there and being like, "Well, oh crap! Where's my bomb? Where's my mine? Where's my I really needed a spike ball in this particular situation." No one is going to notice and be like, "Wow, the entire gameplay is ruined by me not having gadgets." Literally, the only benefit, this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but the major benefit of gadgets is like Sparky was saying, it gives a little bit of identity, a little bit of personality to the game. I said that it can have exciting moments, and what I'm thinking about is like Egg Soup mining himself. There's no way that the entire chat doesn't kind of raise an eyebrow and go, "What just happened?" You know, Egg Soup on the side of a wall throws a bomb at the wall and it bounces back into his face. There's no way that the chat doesn't go, "Oh my god, what just happened?" Failfish, PogChamps, what have you. It has some value in an exciting factor in that sense. But from like a player's standpoint, there's literally zero situations where I'm like, I would have been better off if I had a bomb spawn instead of this hammer, you know? I don't think that's kind of the hardest part about this is if we had tournaments literally back to back for the next week, I don't think anyone is going to be like, so no gadgets means the games are 5 seconds faster. That's it. That's literally that's it. That there's no one's gonna notice. No one's gonna say anything.
Hype plays do happen. I'm not gonna say that they don't happen, but they are so very few and far between, especially in tournaments. Like yesterday, we saw one with Stimpy where I think it was Stimpy, where he punched
Daiku into a bomb.
Yeah, where he punched Daiku into the active bomb. That was once. That happened one time. Off the top of my head, I know that at least 2 people ran into a mine. Memoria ran into a mine, and I can't remember who else just completely, blatantly ran into a mine.
Daiku, I think.
Was it Daiku?
Yeah, I think I remember people get it being like, "Who's this?" Like Daiku, he's bad now.
Okay, well, there's 2. If it's a 2-to-1 ratio, I don't think the hype moments are hype enough. There are other hype moments that don't involve gadgets to balance that out. The hype moments aren't hype enough, but the low moments are definitely low enough that when somebody runs into a mine, it's awful. It is a terrible experience for viewers, for casters, for the players. I don't like that at all.
I mean, it's also worth noting, like, this isn't black and white or binary. There's a middle ground, and that's toned down gadgets. And so some of the suggestions that have been thrown out is, one, make gadget spawning separate from weapon spawning. Because right now, like, when you get a gadget instead of a weapon and you're looking for a weapon, it just sucks. You don't want that. And so it's basically like, hey, have weapon spawning take over with the same frequency that it does right now, and then on top of that, gadgets will have a separate cooldown, and they'll pop up whenever they need to. Along with that, there's like, have the crocky ball have a more noticeable effect, like maybe the spikes like pop out when you throw the ball, and then they retract again when the crocky ball doesn't become active, and then like decrease its stun time or something like that. Mines and bombs decrease their force so that, you know, you run into a mine and you just kill yourself doesn't happen. Like, you'll just take some damage. Oh, okay, I made a little small mistake, I'll take some damage for it. And I think that's viable. It's hard to say whether, like, how much that affects tournaments without them implementing those changes and then seeing it. But I don't want to just say goodbye to all the gadgets. I think sometimes it's going to be cool, and sometimes there are setups that happen by players that's worth seeing, and I kind of want to see them tone it down first and then see how that goes. And if after they tone it down it's still a problem, then they can remove it. The only issue is there's 4 weeks until BCX, and there's just not enough time to try all of that. So I'm interested to see, you know, maybe the tournaments this week, things happen, people say, hey, no gadgets, the tournament was still fun, and then after that they can be like, okay, we'll remove gadgets for BCX, and maybe look at them a little more in depth in the future.
I think.
So, yeah.
Sorry, before we wrap up, I just think that the gadgets as they stand right now aren't a big enough issue that I think that it needs to be immediately addressed the way that I think some other general balance things like jumps are. I think, honestly, even though I was one of the people who made the Reddit post and was like, I don't like gadgets, I think gadgets need some change or potentially to be taken away. If they left it in for BCX, it wouldn't be the end of the world. And if they just said, okay, we'll address it after BCX, see how things go, see if the community still doesn't like them, I don't think the world would end.
I think I can agree with that.
I would also say, if they took them out, I don't think the world would end either. It's like you were saying earlier. If they took them out, I don't think anybody would really miss them. I don't think people would be on the Reddit saying, man, I miss all of those posts that people had of them throwing bombs or sidelighting into a mine. Man, I miss those.
I mean, Defensive might miss them.
No
more Brawlhalla. No more Brawlhalla. Anyway, I'd like to thank our current patrons, Expired and Cluns. We will be back next week with more good Brawlhalla Weekly, and until then, thanks for watching.